few nights ago, I was downtown with some friends, and I decided that it was time to go home. So I said my goodnights, and I walked out under a pink full moon. I hadn't brought my car. So there I was at a crossroads. Either spend 35 minutes walking home or spend 45 minutes installing an app, creating a password, uploading my bank account information. You can see where this is going. Get a cardiovascular workout or have a rage-induced heart attack. I opted to walk, which is funny because the internet gives us a zillion choices, right? Like Uber, Lyft, Zoom. Like I could have just done a Zoom conference with my bed from the sidewalk. We get all of these choices, but then we can forget that our options include unplugging from the computer and using the greatest machine ever created, the human body. It was a good walk. I had been dealing with a lot of disgust and disappointment, and it was nice to air it out. But I didn't have to spend the walk stewing in misery. I kept getting distracted because there were rabbits. There's a time of night when buffalo belongs to the rabbits. And they didn't dart away. They're city rabbits. And no white rabbit beckoned me down any sewer grates. They were just there on the lawns with their sidewalk glances and ridiculous puffy tails. Me and the moon and the rabbits. I pondered this a bit, and suddenly there was my house. Like it just popped up out of nowhere. Apparently, 35 minutes had come and gone, and it was time to go to bed. Thinking about rabbits. You know, the rabbit is a prolific breeder with the ability to conceive one litter while already pregnant with another litter. A female bunny can bear 8 to 12 litters a year, averaging 6 bunnies per litter. Rabbit multiplication, I found out, is exponential. I have read that one reproductive pair of rabbits and their offspring can produce almost 4 million rabbits in 4 years. The most famous rabbit in religion is definitely the Easter Bunny. A rabbit so miraculous that it can lay eggs. Think about this for a moment. And then remember that when the Easter Bunny is depicted in humanoid form wearing clothes, it's almost always male. It's a male rabbit that can lay eggs. Chocolate eggs that look like deformed rabbit droppings. Why is it that in Christian culture, people feel more comfortable with their kids eating something left in the yard by a rabbit who's male instead of female? It's not like on Easter Sunday, roosters have to lay eggs, right? For us to hard boil and color and eat. We still eat the eggs of hens, but the Easter Bunny, for some reason, is male, and also it's a mammal who lays eggs. Anyway, this rabbit, before Easter was born, this rabbit was the messenger of the spring goddess Ostara. And there are some old stories which tell us how this rabbit got this special ability. They say that the goddess Ostara once found a little bird freezing in the snow. Some say it was a swallow, but they don't specify whether it was the African swallow or the European swallow or could carry a coconut. Anyway, she pitied this poor freezing bird and decided to give it a fur coat. And not wanting to kill a bunny, she transformed the bird into a rabbit so it could be warm in its rabbit fur. And they say that once a year, as spring approaches, this enchanted rabbit temporarily regains its avian reproductive apparatus and the ability to lay eggs. That is one messed up story. I didn't hear it when I was a kid. As a matter of fact, I'd never heard it until I started working on this sermon, but I found it online attributed to, if you can believe it, the November 1896 issue of Popular Science Monthly. So I guess that's what they called science in 1896. I doubt they're still teaching that in biology classes. But ornithology never has been very popular among the sciences. Rabbits can be associated with luck, like an old tradition of saying rabbit, rabbit on the first day of the month. And of course, the lucky rabbit's foot, which is ironic because that foot wasn't very lucky for the rabbit. Rabbits can also symbolize the dangers of laziness and pride. I'm sure we all remember how the race with the turtle ended up. It's one of the most famous fables, far more well known than the story of the turtle who raced a gentleman from Germany, Das Tortoise and Mein Herr. That folktale is actually so obscure that it didn't even exist before I just made it up. In many African cultures, the rabbit is a symbol of a trickster and an underdog who has to use its wits in order to win. In one story, Rabbit's wife complains that he is too lazy to plow the field. So he goes out, but instead of doing the work, he goes to the edge of the village and challenges an elephant to a tug of war and says that the loser has to do the winner's farm work. So he ties a long rope to the elephant's tail and he hops off, saying that the contest will begin when the elephant feels the first strong pull. And the rabbit hopped all the way to the other side of the village where he met a hippopotamus. And he made the same bet over a game of tug of war. And so, having tied their tails together, he gets them pulling and attaches his plow to the center of the rope. And with the hippo and the elephant struggling against each other, the rabbit's field gets done in no time. And then he just cuts the rope and sends them both tumbling off in opposite directions. This is one of those stories in which the little person, the underdog, has to outsmart those who are larger and more powerful. The rabbit, as resourceful trickster, lives on in the Looney Tunes character Bugs Bunny, who's always being hunted and who always needs to use his boundless creativity to escape the hunter, Elmer Fudd. Native North Americans also have stories of rabbits who have to outsmart their predators. In one story, the rabbit was pursued by a coyote all day. And finally, after dark, the rabbit realized it couldn't run anymore. So it sat by a lake and, downcast with despair, saw the moon reflected in the water. The coyote approached, stalking nearer and nearer, but found that the rabbit made no attempt to escape. So the coyote asked, "What are you looking at?" The rabbit said, "I don't know. I think it's a cheese. You see, there's a big wheel of blue cheese at the bottom of the lake. And the coyote looked down and saw this big bright circle and thought about how well some cheese would go with his rabbit dinner. "Hey," the coyote said, "how do you think we get it?" "I don't know. We'd drown trying to swim down there. The only thing I can think of is drain the lake." The coyote said, "How?" And the rabbit said, "You drink it, silly." The coyote said, "But the lake is bigger than my body." And the rabbit said, "Yeah, but it just comes out the other end and you keep going." Well, the coyote couldn't argue with this, so he drank and drank and drank the lake. But by the end of it, he was so waterlogged inside that the rabbit was able to get away. That's a good story. There's another story from Peru where the rabbit is being chased by a coyote and it leaps high into the air and lands on the moon. And the coyote sits down and stares up at the moon and realizes that this rabbit he was about to eat is the most beautiful thing he's ever seen. And he doesn't want to eat it anymore. He's fallen in love. But it's too late to explain this. The rabbit is gone. So the coyote throws back his head and starts crying. And they say that heartbroken coyotes have been wailing at the moon ever since. Anyway, that's one explanation of how the rabbit got on the moon. This thing of a rabbit on the moon is something that as a teacher and writer I come across in numerous cultures. And so I decided that for today I would kind of I would put together, what are these stories about this rabbit? Is there a rabbit on the moon? Here's a true story. As astronauts were briefed before the Apollo 11 launched for the first moon landing in 1969, a member of ground control told them, and this is a direct quote, "Among the large headlines concerning Apollo this morning is one asking if you will watch for a lovely girl and a big rabbit. An ancient Chinese legend says that a girl named Shang-O has been living there on the moon for 4,000 years. It seems she was banished to the moon because she stole a pill of immortality from her husband. You might also look for her companion, a large Chinese rabbit who is easy to spot since he is always standing on his hind legs in the shade of a cinnamon tree." Astronaut Michael Collins responded, "Okay, we'll keep a close eye out for the bunny girl." Well, neither Armstrong nor Aldrin mentioned it, and Collins was not part of the moon landing. But it turns out, if you look very closely at the moon landing footage shot in Hollywood, California, you'll notice Harvey, the big white rabbit, who was on loan from Universal Pictures. Even if Shang-O and her rabbit were not spotted on the moon landing, we've all seen her now, since one of the impact craters on the moon has been named Shang-O after her. I've lived under the moon for about half my life, and never once have I seen a rabbit. But while researching for this message, I came across an image where somebody highlighted the outline on the lunar surface, and I'll be darned, it's really there. A rabbit on its hind legs looking over some kind of drum or bucket. It's like one of those magic eye things, like once you've seen the image, the moon will never look the same way again. This is something that we find in Chinese, Japanese, Korean, and Vietnamese mythologies, in which the jade rabbit, they say, has a mortar and pestle used to grind the ingredients for either rice cakes or a powder of immortality. In a Buddhist legend from ancient India, there was a monkey, an otter, a jackal, and a rabbit who had a contest to see who could be the most charitable on the night of a full moon. And they came upon a homeless person who was sitting by a fire with nothing to cook and nothing to eat. So all four of these animals scrambled off to get him some food. The monkey picked fruits from high in the trees. The otter dove down into the river to return with fish. The jackal hunted a lizard. And the rabbit realized that it couldn't get anything but grass. So when the others delivered their gifts of food, the rabbit came up and hopped into the beggar's fire to offer himself to eat. Now, the old man turned out to be a deity in disguise and pulled the rabbit unharmed from the flames and declared him to be a bodhisattva, a great enlightened Buddhist teacher. And in his honor, they say, this deity then drew the rabbit's portrait on the surface of the moon. This is not the only story about how self-immolation got the rabbit onto the moon. I was reading an Aztec myth from Central America where they say that two gods, in the early days of creation, two gods were elected to become the sun and the moon. And they told this proud and handsome god that he would shine as the sun, and they told a shy and ugly god that he would have to be the moon. And in order to illuminate themselves, they were both instructed to leap into a bonfire. But at the last minute, the proud, handsome god stumbled, terrified by the blaze, while the shy god leapt into it. Not to be outdone, the proud god jumped in after him. But as they emerged, glowing with flame, one of the elder deities who was present, disgusted with the handsome god's cowardice, picked up a rabbit and threw it at his face. And they say that this extinguished his flame and left a permanent imprint, the shape of a bunny. And so he had to become the moon. The moral of the story is, of course, you should always leap before you look. Or don't look at all if you're an Aztec about to be sacrificed. The most fascinating aspect of Aztec rabbit mythology, we'll close out with this, is called the Senson Totochkin, meaning the 400 rabbits who are the Aztec spirits of drunkenness. The Aztecs believed that each form of intoxication, boastful, bashful, belligerent, social, sentimental, sloshed, out cold in the corner, every manifestation of intoxication had its own rabbit guardian angel. Or perhaps better said, they believed that the consumption of intoxicants would summon one of these spirits to possess the drinker, and no one could predict which one it would be. So when your drunken buddy totally embarrassed himself, herself, you would nod your head at the other guests and say, "He has become his rabbit." And they would understand. The Aztecs believe in a sort of rabbit roulette. Like life is like a box of rabbits and you never know what you're going to get. Well, I'm not suggesting that we all start conducting experiments to meet our spirit rabbits. But in mythologies throughout space and time, we encounter the rabbit as a spirit of generosity, ingenuity, creativity. In these beliefs from all over the world, there is this common theme that the rabbits are out there, or that maybe they're inside of us, and that they are waiting for us, the people, to finally become our rabbits. Thank you.